deal. It's just like seats. All the tech stuff is on another level.
You said the theater, bro? You're in theater?
Yeah. I've been doing theater since I got here, bro. That's why I'm a dramatic, like to over-exaggerate things. You can't control that in me. That's just how in me.
I have no idea. Are we live? Oh. Hey, world.
Over live? Oh, hi. Cool.
So, affirmative should start? Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
I just take it we go up there. And this is you timing or something. Can you like keep up the clock? That'd be helpful. Oh, hold on one second. I remember when I was a kid, I loved learning about the founding of America, the Boston Tea Party, the Declaration of Independence, and of course, the Constitution. They were my favorite, and I always thought that the reason the Electoral College was created was to put a check on the uneducated masses. So convinced was I that even now, I wouldn't be surprised if our opponents have had a similar misunderstanding. For years, for decades, this was how I defended it to my friends who believed in the popular vote. But for years, and for decades, I was misled. The Electoral College as a check for controlling the populace was a lie, a fiction created later to justify its existence. The true reason the Electoral College was created was to perpetuate slavery. James Madison, in Discussions over a Popular Vote System, said, "The right of suffrage was much more diffusive, that is extensive, in the northern than the southern states, and the latter could have no influence in the election on the score of Negroes." That is to say, back when the Constitution was being created and ratified, the North had more people and therefore more voting power under a direct voting system. And that would have led to the dissolution of slavery much sooner than the Civil War. This was not something that the South could allow. In fact, the Electoral College and the Three-Fifths Compromise were created together under Article 2 of the Constitution. They were a package deal for the protection of slavery made to bring in Southern votes. Just as the Three-Fifths Compromise has been abolished, so too must the Electoral College be abolished. One of the clearest places we can see this is in the disenfranchisement of black votes in the elections, where there is a sharp drop-off in voting during non-presidential years. In 2010, 41% of eligible voters voted. Even worse, 2014 saw only 36% during the midterms. In comparison, 58% voted in 2012 and 62% voted in 2008. The reason for this disparity is because minorities know their vote will be overwhelmed by the majority white vote, which is present in 46 of the 50 states. Racial conservatives no longer need to manipulate the Electoral College because they can rely on the discriminatory mathematics of this winner-take-all system, which ensures that racial minorities have no voice in determining the composition of the Electoral College. This creates a huge disincentive for minorities to vote. It undermines true democracy. Furthermore, the Electoral College has consistently allowed the rolling back of civil rights. A high-level example of this can be seen in the election of Trump as a backlash to Obama. However, numerous more examples can be seen throughout our history. After the landmark Brown versus Board of Ed, which was to desegregate schools, the follow-up case in Milliken versus Bradley struck down plans to desegregate the busing system across district lines in Detroit, making actual desegregation practically impossible, even if it was there in principle. Or in the 80s, when attempts were made to develop poorer black communities, this too was rolled back. Slashes to programs and TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, welfare reform in '96 cut food stamps and welfare specifically targeted to get black people off of welfare. They made welfare unlivable. Or the 3 strikes policy, where people, again, primarily minorities, who committed 3 nonviolent felonies were put in jail for life. Or the stronger sentencing for crack users over cocaine users, when there's no chemical difference in the drugs actually being used, but there is a difference in the race of the users and the sentencing that they get upon trial. These policies are allowed to work because they target the states, particularly the southern ones, and those who turn out to vote. But in a one-person, one-vote system, the most fair that we can create, this would never happen. These sorts of rollbacks would never pass national scrutiny. And we see this larger history of institutional racism and caricatures of black people in southern states being resurrected during Trump's election. We've seen this throughout these past months and in the beginning of his presidency as well. These ideas and regressions are old. They've been created in order to win electoral college votes for decades and perhaps centuries. And then they consistently trickle down to state politics after being employed, such as with Reagan in the 80s. The idea of a black menace is systematically targeted and perpetuated because of the Electoral College. If you have a one-person, one-vote strategy, you have a more universal and inclusive system that would allow the unimpeded progress of civil rights for all. There is no democracy without solving racism. Finally, under the current system, there can only be political representation or police repression. The inevitable result of a failure to meet black demands in the political sphere will create an armed defense of blacks, which will lead to the militarized police forces, which inevitably leads to an ethnic cleansing run by the police force. It's not as if this isn't happening now. Take Michael Brown in Ferguson, the Rodney King riots of '92 in LA, or the death of Freddie Gray and the Baltimore riots, which turned violent because they didn't have a political means for fighting for their rights, which should be protected under the Constitution and not undermined. The leftovers from the Iraq War, the weapons that we are no longer using, have been allowed to be sold to police departments across the country, which means that the police are deadlier than ever. In an America where advanced weapons like sound cannons or Apache helicopters are being used by the police, and every officer has an assault rifle, these riots are going to turn progressively more deadly. But those weapons aren't being bought in rich white communities. They are the ones in poor black communities which are the most likely to participate in future riots. The ones that are going on now and will continue to go on in the future unless we fix the inequality that is systematically created in the system. In the past, the police used to wear riot gear and stand up against protesters, but even this was deadly, and we've seen this during the civil rights movement. But that's not how they operate anymore. They want to disperse these crowds quickly, and they have weapons that are far too powerful to do so. If this is allowed to continue, it will not only affect some cities, but it will become a nationwide pandemic. The only options remaining to us in an electoral college system are political representation or police repression. Whenever we find structural racism, it must be abolished from our system. This is an ethical and moral imperative. Institutional racism undermines democracy from all angles. The only way we move forward is if we move forward together. It doesn't matter what they say about the benefits, because if those benefits are unequally distributed, they are worthless. For these reasons, the Electoral College must be abolished. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. Alright.
Oh, you want to stand here for cross as well?
Oh, cross as well. Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay.
7C, bro. It's cool.
I liked my walk-off.
I know. It's dramatic.
Dramatic.
It's okay.
All right. I'll just start off in like 3, 2. Okay. So my first question to you as the affirmative is: do you know your electorates for your state?
My personal electorates?
Yes.
No.
The electoral college. Okay. Next question: do you know anything about do you have a name equivalent to them at all? Any person knowing?
What do you mean? Can you clarify the question?
You don't have any name for your electorate, do you?
Like
either?
the name of each individual electorate?
Or just your personal?
No, see, I believe this is one of the problems. That these
Okay.
people are anonymous and created into the system in a way that has no actual verification or justification.
So if we found a way to verify these people, that will create a better system, correct?
What do you mean by verify these people?
By verify, get to know them, make them more open, almost have them like as a public figure as well.
No, because the incentives for these people to actually do their job, which is to be a faithless elector, right? This is if they actually bring somebody up that is bad for the America, to vote against them for the purpose of actually continuing democracy is what they're all about. If we just knew them, that has no actual change on their incentives besides a slight public repercussion. But we already could find them and we could challenge them, and that's not something that's going on. So I see no reason why knowing them better through talk shows or interviews is going to change the system in any substantial way. So no.
Okay. Next, you say the Electoral College is being used to hold up the system of racism that is is fundamentally inside the system or inside of our government.
Well, it was founded on racism, the 3/5 Compromise and the Electoral College together. That was the Article 2 of the Constitution. That was kind of dealt with James Madison, which I talked about. Yes, I did say that, and I think that does perpetuate today. You know, because you have in a lot of states where the majority are, the majority of states are white, right? Like 46 of these states. And in a winner-take-all style of election, there's no real incentive for minorities to come out and vote in the way that they could, because they know that at the top of the ballot, they are going to be overwhelmed by the majority in the state.
Okay.
But if you had a one-person, one-vote system, the single majority in each individual state, which is how it's structured, starts falling apart. You now have a place where cities can come together and communities can come together and branch across America and connect to each other for their common interests. This is something that you can't see when there's usually only one big city in a state. But if you had people coming together in this sort of fashion, they could defend their rights on a more fundamental level. No longer will communities be overwhelmed by the stampeding racist populace, you know?
So I get what you're saying. So, but here's the thing. You said they connect to the cities. So the cities start connecting to each other. So is the majority connecting more to another majority?
Well, they're not really a majority, are they?
Because if you say they're going to work together, the city's going to work together, the majority. So let's say, in one day, Pittsburgh is the majority in Pennsylvania, and then they start communicating to Cleveland, right? So you're saying that's how they're going to work together, right?
The problem is that you can't call it a majority, because even if they started working together, if they had a one vote per one person system, they would have more political power. But it's not a majority, because no matter how you do the math, there is still a white majority in America. So this problem is a bit foundational, but the fact that it is embedded in the very Constitution, which was created for equal rights, is one of the fundamental things perpetuating the worst of this issue.
So your plan doesn't solve it anyway. You're saying, like, we just remove it from within the government, but it doesn't solve the actual matter of fact.
It absolutely does solve it.
How so?
Because right now, there is no way to have your political rights represented if you are being surrounded within your state, right?
But then you will be surrounded in the country. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but we already see from Donald Trump and Hillary that a majority of people can come together and vote for. With Hillary and Trump, we can see that the majority will come together to create solutions that are less racist as currently going on. But in an electoral college system, these will be perpetuated ongoing, as we can see are being happened right now in our country. Cool. Thank you.
Sorry. Ready?
Yep. One in.
First of all, before we start the time, I'd like to thank the judge for coming and thank our advocates here at the University of UNC for coming to debate us at this lovely tournament here. We're happy to be here. So first of all, I think we have a disagreement here about what the fundamental principles here are. So conventionally, the vote in 2016 went to the loser of the popular vote. Conventionally, this is what we've accepted to become the status quo. This also happened in 2000, and the last time it happened was 1888. So, I mean, it happens, but it's grossly mitigated by the fact that it barely ever happens. Constitutional wisdom, however, tells us that the 2016 election of Trump should have never happened. The supreme purpose of the Electoral College was essentially to prevent demagoguery as a safety valve for the people, a valve that should only be used under extreme conditions as the judge of the jury, and to confirm or not the people's choice, as Harvard law professor Lawrence Lessing puts it. Hamilton also calls for this power, this veto power again, to be used in extreme cases to come to use if the candidate, 1, is mentally insane, 2, has been compromised by a foreign actor, or 3, is grossly unqualified. Hamilton and the framers did not call for a winner-take-all system. They absolutely did not call for constraints and punishment on the electors of 32 out of 50 states, and certainly they did not advocate for the fact that currently one vote in Wyoming is 4 times as powerful as one vote in Michigan. States were given the right to choose their electors because if the states choose, then there would be less room for corruption in the system. A detached and divided situation will expose them to less heats and ferments, as Hamilton puts it. It would be more difficult to corrupt 50 groups of different people rather than one general body. So the framers constituted in Article 2, Section 1, that each state shall appoint in such a manner that as the legislative thereof may direct a number of electors. It did not create a groundwork for how states would choose, and therefore those three specific functions that you guys are attacking of the status quo, while they're consistent with the Electoral College and the Constitution, do not automatically constitute an abolishing the Electoral College, and they are not a result of how the Electoral College system was framed, rather a failure on behalf of the states to recognize the theoretical framework. The shift in the statewide winner-take-all system, was not done for like idealistic reasons. Rather, it was a product of partisan pragmatism. As the state leaders, they wanted to maximize support for their preferred candidate. And James Madison, as you cited, who we know is the father of the Constitution, in the Philadelphia Convention, stated that the actual and only purpose in reality of the winner-take-all system was to increase the power of southern states that had slaves that couldn't vote, and he preferred actually a popular vote over that system. The electors, in fact, were framed by Hamilton as men most capable of analyzing the qualities adapted to the situation and acting under the circumstances favorable to deliberation. These were intended to be free. They were intended to have free choice. He also called the protection from cabal and corruption. No senator, representative, or other person holding a place of trust or profit under the United States, which we've obviously destroyed with the current nomination process. We're looking for men with no affiliation to party lines, which would be the ideal Hamilton elector. Therefore, we propose a counterplan that not only solves better what you guys are looking for, but we think is consistent with the original framework that was supposed to be in the first place. The popular vote bill, in which states agree to constitutionally have their electorates vote for the winner of the popular vote, along with elector visibility, which results in more accountability, more political action by individuals, and therefore better democracy, all of which should be consistent with the theoretical framework that the founders had discussed earlier. So the popular vote bill preserves the Electoral College without the need for a constitutional amendment, because if it continues to allow states to choose how their electors are chosen while maintaining a safety valve for when America goes crazy, which it hasn't in the case in 2016. But this means that most of the time the winner of the popular vote will win the election, given that they are saying, because of the difficulty it'll take to get 270 Electoral College votes. And in fact, 25 of 50 states have already received passage for this bill in at least one legislative chamber. Secondly, our plan increases elector visibility. When we ask you guys, who are your electors? You don't know. I don't even know mine. Okay? At the end of the day, you guys crumbled, because currently our electors are chosen in a behind-the-closed-door fashion that is not immediately available or relevant to the regular populace. By having an elector elected in a decision that requires almost a yes or no answer, it creates the type of transparency that we don't achieve anywhere else in American politics. Usually our decisions on whether or not a candidate upheld his promises is, it's an overall summary judgment. Did he or did he not appease whatever I needed? And moreover, individuals be much more concerned with these elections if they understand the weight and power that the potential veto players have. They would want someone, as Hamilton put it, to be moral, capable of this deliberation, if need be. And therefore, it would create better democracy, create a better system overall with more inclusion, more transparency, and a safety valve in case we go crazy. In America, we've seen the potential for individuals like Donald Trump to be elected, and the popular vote will be represented 99% of the time. The AF, they had a few issues that I would like to discuss at this point. First of all, the AF gets into all these issues of slavery and if the Electoral College is to continue, we're gonna have a race war. We're not here to discuss race war. We're here to discuss the Electoral College and why it should be abolished. The AF has the absolute responsibility to describe and tell us why the Electoral College should be abolished on a constitutional level, and we have erred, and they have erred in their theoretical frameworks and how it is actually established. It's sort of is an extra topicality. And for that reason, we think you just vote AF on this.
Oh, neg.
Or neg. Excuse me. You should vote neg on this issue. Thank you. Oh, ready for cross.
Sure. So you were mentioning that this system was designed as a safety valve.
Yeah.
But you agree that it's not working. You said that in your speech, correct?
I said the status quo of the Electoral College is not working because it's not operating within the original framework as it was intended. If it was working within the original framework as it was intended, then it would have worked in the 2016 election, was the first thing I said.
So then let me ask, how do you respond with the Article 2 of the Constitution containing both the 3/5 compromise and the Electoral College, which we have shown some evidence for being taken together to appease the southern states? If that was the original intention to perpetuate slavery, like how do you defend that as on a constitutional level?
Article 2, Section 1, I'm going to go ahead and cite it again. Each state shall appoint, and I discussed earlier why that decision was made, and it is our understanding that the decision was made because it was made so that the electors couldn't be swayed, so that they couldn't be paid off. If you have 270 people in the room, it's easier to pronounce some sort of large, grandiose scheme to maybe persuade those people, and it's harder to persuade 50 different individual groups of different people, and that's why Hamilton lays out that they should be selected by the states, not because of slavery.
So you believe in every instance that the Constitution as it was originally written is correct, and that is the only thing we should adhere to in this debate?
What I'm saying is the original framework of the Electoral College was correct, in the theoretical framework behind it, if applied today, would also achieve a result that is more desirable than, what do you guys, just popular vote is what you're going for? That is more desirable than the plan that you've laid out.
But what I just asked was, in the original Constitution, do you agree with everything in it if we're going to make this is a constitutional-based debate?
We're debating the Electoral College. In terms of the Electoral College framework, theoretical framework, I agree with the position that was made, and I agree that if the theoretical framework of the Electoral College was handled how it was supposed to, because right now we're not in the theoretical framework. There is no winner-take-all system. There is no, states were supposed to decide, but they weren't supposed to create a winner-take-all system. And Madison, the founder of the Constitution, like I said before, was actually opposed to this winner-take-all system. So
yes.
Status quo, we aren't within the theoretical framework. And therefore, if we move back to the theoretical framework and apply that today, then we have a solution that works for everybody.
I feel as though you're dodging around my question. My question is specifically, do you believe that every aspect of the Constitution needs to be defended just because it was in the original document?
I'm not sure if you've read the entire Constitution. I haven't read the entire Constitution. Nobody in this room has read the entire Constitution. I understand there are things in the Constitution that are somewhat questionable, and those things can be challenged, but this specific thing in the Constitution is actually pretty sound. And when you look at it and you look at the theoretical framework around it, you can understand why it is sound and it will apply today and it'll work today.
And one more question. You have mentioned that neither of us really know our electors, right?
Right.
That because they're not very well known. But
Right.
You are aware that we do vote for our electors ourselves.
Who did you vote for?
It's in the ballot.
So when you voted for the elector, all right, when you went, you're 18, you voted this year, right? When you go to the voting booth, you go in, and it's a process that says Democrat or Republican, and there's a list of people. And did you read the names off of the electors?
I chose the funniest one.
Absolutely not. Did not read the names off the electors. You did not probe and see who this individual is, and that's the problem that we're stating. If these individuals must run for office, they must connect with communities, and this creates more visibility, more accountability, and therefore you have better democracy because people are more involved, more aware of how decisions are being made, and by extension, we have better democracy and better policy moving forward.
So you're not changing the status of the way this is created. You are simply saying that we need to have more publicity for our electors.
You can finish that question. That's his last question.
Ask me the question again.
Okay, so just to be clear about what your plan is, it's not to change anything about the way that we're structuring the law or the Constitution. It's simply to have more exposure and publicity for the electors who are getting voted in anyway?
We want more publicity for the electors, and we also want the popular vote bill to go through. You guys actually have the burden of telling us why the Constitution needs to be changed.
Okay, thank you. I think we can say
Next speech 2A.
Yeah.
There's no. Okay.
You feel good?
There's no prep.
You got it. Just talk about what there is.
Is this timed as well?
Oh, there you go. No. There's no prep in between these spaces, so it's just like right after.
Okay, yeah.
Just Since they did, I want to thank our judge for being here, and you guys for being here too. Brian was a little ready to get into our argument, but we have a lot to talk about here. The negative here wants to defend the Constitution and the specifics that we have highlighted in Article 2 of the Constitution, which we are saying is imperatively racist. But they also refuse to acknowledge the state issues that we have talked about. So if these individuals that they say run for office need more transparency from the electorates, we need to make sure that they are also representing all the people in their districts, which we believe is not the case. And changing the status quo perpetuates these systems of racism and unrepresentative democracy. So we have really highlighted 3 huge impacts of continuing the Electoral College, which they have seemed to not want to address. Mainly the disenfranchisement and low voter turnout of Black and minority voters, the rollback of civil rights, in the sense that almost every time there is progressive reform, there's a step back with regressive reform. So we go from our first Black president to President Trump. And we also view the issue has only 2 future options. We either politically represent all our people, or we turn to police repression. The Electoral College, as we have said, is racist because it disenfranchises Black voters. It's rooted in sustaining systems of racism and was originally rooted in sustaining slavery. From Article 2, we have talked about, it establishes the election process for presidents indirectly through the allocation of state electors. And Madison's 3/5 compromise was very fundamental in that it assures populous urban areas in the North would not be able to abolish slavery and roll back systems of racism. The Electoral College allowed the South to protect their interests, and we need to make sure that these conservative interests are no longer on the table. One of the clearest places we can see this disenfranchisement of Black voters in elections is where there's a sharp drop-off in voting during non-presidential years. In 2010, only 41% of eligible voters voted, and even worse, in 2014, only 36% voted in the midterms. In comparison, 58% voted in 2012 and 62% voted in 2008. And the reason for this disparity is because minorities know their votes will be overwhelmed by the majorities of white votes in the present 46 out of 50 states where they are outnumbered. There's only Hawaii, New Mexico, and Texas and California. Racial conservatives no longer need to manipulate the Electoral College because they can rely on these discriminatory mathematics of a winner-take-all system. And this ensures that racial minorities have no voice in determining the composition of the Electoral College, which they want to defend and make more apparent. And so this creates a huge disincentive for minorities to vote in gerrymandered districts and undermines our democracy, which is the main point we believe the Electoral College should be abolished. So in response to, so talking about the rolling back of civil rights, the Electoral College has consistently allowed the rollback of many civil rights. Examples include voting rights, desegregation, and the pattern follows, as I said, from progressive reform back to regressive reform. This we can talk about Brown versus Board of Education, which threw out separate but equal schools. But as soon as this, and Swan versus Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education, but in 1974, Milliken versus Bradley halted Detroit's desegregation busing plans for continuing involvement in housing and school segregation. So this current system further disadvantages minorities, and we argue that the current system only has 2 future options. There is no democracy without solving racism. The inevitable result of a failure to meet minority demands for political representation will create more organized protests and even riots to demonstrate these inequalities. We have seen this a lot recently, as Ryan had said, especially in Black communities, conventionally grossly mitigated by the fact that it never happens, this is their words, and demagogues never get elected. We just have evidence of that in the 2016 election. If the electorate was meant to stop Trump, they would have. But as we will point out, only 3 of them said no, and more electorate voted against Hillary for Bernie protest votes. So the theoretical framework that they're arguing, continues to allow states to decide their own electorates, and supports amoral and incapable, and they are incapable of this deliberation. We need to create a better democracy and check this safety valve, which is just not working. The status quo of the Electoral College is not working as it was intended to work in the 2016 election, and their understanding is that the Electoral College was made so the Electoral could ensure that this does not happen. Instead of giving them instead of getting minority people political representations, this forces police to respond with more militarized assaults, suppressing their protests, and inevitably leading what we can consider as ethnic cleansing by our police force. It's not this isn't happening now, as Ryan has said. Michael Brown, the Rodney King riots, these are really important issues in our states that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, you looking for Gross?
You talked. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you guys bring up minorities so much. How do you know that minorities won't know that their votes won't count?
How do we know that their votes
How do
won't?
you know that a minority thinks my vote won't count?
Well, we say that in these gerrymandered districts, there's many in our state, and even here in Florida, we did some research on it, but they are sectioned off so that all their votes are surrounded by, seas of red, is what we kind of call it. And the fact that in this winner-takes-all system, there's way more of these white conservative districts that can outvote their votes. And if we turn to a national political system, we can do a one for one where it go across the entire country.
So has the winner-take-all system, was that framed in the Constitution? Did they say states must use a winner-take-all system?
No, we are
Okay,
arguing that
so
that is
you would-
imperatively racist.
So you would agree that the winner-take-all system is not within the theoretical framework that the founders have created for the Electoral College?
No, but the theoretical framework supported systems of racism and slavery, which we think need to be changed.
The question is, in the theoretical framework of the Constitution, does it say at any point in time that there should be a winner-take-all system? It's honestly like a yes or no question, right?
I understand, but I'm just saying that this is not as relevant as what we are talking about. We are saying that democracy cannot happen unless we move to a system where people are more representative, such as a winner-takes-all
Right.
system.
So a winner-take-all system is more representative. I'm sorry, you said a winner-take-all system is
Then the
more
current
representative?
system, which perpetuates systems of racism and underrepresentation of minority voters.
So wouldn't it make sense that individuals would have the ability to vote for the electors? Say you guys are North Carolina, correct?
Correct.
You guys have 19 or 20?
15.
A pretty big state, right?
15.
So 15 individuals from each different place. Does that not give the ability for an individual that is conscionable, like Hamilton argued, to come and be one of the electors and represent effectively a portion of the population?
It does, but if
Okay.
I could turn back and ask you guys directly, which I won't, I would say that this has not empirically happened. And if you could cite evidence where, I would like to see.
So that's actually the counterpoint. It's like the fiat sort of argument here, where we assume here that our plan is running how it's supposed to run, and if that's the case, there is no case then for the abolishment of the Electoral College. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I would not agree.
Okay. You talk about the 2016 election. You say that we see these big swings in we go from Obama to Trump. I think it's pretty clear that's a huge swing.
A regressive
Yeah.
move to a progressive candidate.
So did we address that in almost the first sentence when we said that it shouldn't have happened and it wouldn't have happened in the theoretical framework?
But it did happen.
But if my question is, if the theoretical framework was in place, is it the case that Trump would have been elected, not for a winner-take-all system, not for these, states have restrictions, right?
Because the majority voted for Hillary.
Right, and states have these restrictions on the electorates as well, right? Do you understand that information? So if 32 out of the 50 states are restricting individuals' freedom of choice, which was in the original framework, how then are those electors allowed to actually be Hamilton electors if they're receiving punishment and fines for actually doing the purpose of the Electoral College?
Can you rephrase your question?
Yeah, so within the theoretical framework,
Yes.
if individuals are being punished for applying the theoretical framework, would you agree that that's not the theoretical framework?
I think
If the theoretical framework is free electors
Yes.
that can vote however they want,
Yes.
and there's states that are saying you can't vote how you want, is that consistent with the theoretical framework?
I think it's consistent with systems of racism and slavery that have been perpetuated in this country throughout.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. All right, let's get it done. Judge, are you ready? Awesome. All right, just do housewarming. My name is Aaron Hill. Just for judging purposes, I am the 2N. Okay, let's go ahead. I would first like to say at the beginning of my speech, I'm sorry that this debate has gone off track. Why has this debate on track? As my partner mentioned in his 1AC, this debate has become extra topical. The affirmative is extra topical. Now, what does that mean? The affirmative is claiming happy benefits to the abolishing electoral college that we're not supposed to be discussing. They are discussing the idea that the rest of the Constitution or the system of government is inbred, racist, or oppresses minorities. We agree, but they have no clue. There is no way the electoral college can fix that in any way or any solvency to that plan. They have tried to make this point that the Constitution, they try to get us to admit that the Constitution outside electoral college is messed up and oppresses minorities. Yet in this debate, we cannot address that. We do not have the research done. I have limited prep time in order to address that, and there's no way that should be allowed in this debate. They conceded to that in their after argument. That means they conceded to cheating. That is a fairness issue asked by 4. Now, as I said, the resolution established the limits for the debate. You can't just show up and argue that we should institute a single-payer healthcare system because we're not prepared to debate that. The resolution clearly states that affirmative can only advocate abolishing electoral college. They can't go beyond that, and this is important because this is a one-off resolution, and we get to spend a whole year studying literature and refining our research. Prep time is very limited, forcing us to debate outside of the limits of the resolution, making this debate impossible. You're good, and should vote negative on the issue. Relax. She can understand. Am I speaking faster than you can comprehend?
Just relax a little bit, bro. Just take it easy. Go ahead.
I got it. It's fine. Don't do that. Anyway, now, to group all their arguments, they say, to start to grouping our arguments, they say that police of ethnic cleansing, they make this argument about ethnic cleansing, that they say that their plan of abolishing electoral college can somehow solve that, yet did not explain how or in which way. They say that because of voting, because we don't have voters that represent us, the police are allowed to retaliate on us, which is faulty logic. But anyway, so let's go. Okay, so this is what our counter plan does. Our counter plan creates us and allows us to have electors that represent us. So how does that do that? Exactly, let me show you. Because if we are allowed to put them into publicity, if you know the name, know the person, what they stand for on that ballot that you signed or you voted for, that creates a whole different perspective. Black and minorities will finally believe in who is making their decisions for them, instead of this idea of, like, as you say, minorities believe now that their vote doesn't matter because it's always the white majority, right? If we give them an electorate who shows them that they care, that shows them that they will follow, that shows them that I am listening to your concerns, we will be able to increase voter participation within the rural or within the minority communities if we allow them to understand who that person is. No one here, even after this debate, if they abolish electoral college, will have any idea of the history of electoral college. Who is it? Who made these decisions? But if we start doing it now, we create a new precedent in American history that allows us to research these people and truly care about our electoral system. Now, let's go on to the next part, which is... Okay. Their plan doesn't institute the legal principle of one person, one vote. All it can do is eliminate the electoral college. Now how? This means that the moment for voting rights gets gutted, the movement has been coalescing ever since the Supreme Court overturned vast portions of the Voting Rights Act in 2013. There's a delicate coalition of folks fighting against an entire basket of issues, including felon disenfranchisement, gerrymandering, voter ID laws, and burdensome registration requirements. When they get the perceived win of the plan, the less committed and more politically motivated members of the movement drop off, and the whole thing dissipates. That means that the act makes voting injustice worse, not better. Making it look like we're enshrining one person will vote in the Constitution without actually doing it is the worst thing we can do. To believe otherwise, you have to believe that the same court that overturned Shelby County versus Holder in 2013, except with the even more right-wing Gorsuch replacing Scalia, would somehow find the principle of one person will vote in the Act constitutional amendment and choose to endorse it. To also further how they make oppression worse. They say they want to create a unity within the United States nationally that cities should work together in order to solve these problems. It becomes now from Pittsburgh minoritizing their entire state and Cleveland or whatever city they want minoritizing their entire state to now the entire country minoritizing the minority. Now, let me explain this to you. Now, let me show you how. Because let's say there's a city or population 50-50, 50 minority, 50 white, and then another city gets with 70% white, 20% minority. If those cities combine together, the population for both states now swing in the majority instead of the minority, which is what they're trying to fix. How is that logical? Math shows that percentage, if you combine those percentages together, that you are losing more than you gain. The minorities you were trying to help will inevitably be hurt. You actually create and push more into the system of racism than that exists now. You care about these people, but yet you make their lives worse. The neg makes this argument that the net benefit, the electoral college, how it was originally intended by the framers, would solve this because the electoral college was made for the idea of the minority, of the rural area, for the will of the little guy. We cannot use that theoretical framework now because that's not how the system is. The real form of the electoral college was made when there was no idea of a two-party system and it was warned against it. The history and the evidence of now does not meet the electoral college we need to be at. Vote for the ideal electoral college, the one that checks for the minorities, the one where the elector makes the logical decision instead of the political decision. Thank you.
So, first question from the negative is, would you say that everyone in America cares about who votes for president?
Yes. It's by the ideal of a citizen, yes. Every citizen should care who their elector is.
Do they in the current system?
Do they in the current system?
Is their vote
no, because
active?
they believe their vote is being uncounted for, right? So if we give them a system in which they feel and actually show them that their vote matters, that will change.
So even if they... Sorry, what did you say?
And your system doesn't help that at all either, or your ideal of abolishing the electoral college.
So even if they knew the electors, would you say that, like, would they? I don't know.
If you know a person, you're going to vouch for them. You believe they have your ideals. If I don't,
but do you think that it makes them care more about the election cycle? Do you think that decreases voter apathy?
No, I don't think it decreases.
I mean,
Wait.
Yeah. You don't think it decreases voter apathy?
Okay, repeat the question to me again.
So,
the need clarification.
No worries. So even if they know their electorate, does that mean that does that mean that everyone will care?
Does that mean everyone will care? Well, yes, there's different electorates for different kind of people. But if you give them a personal idea, imagine. See, the presidential election is the most cared about election throughout all elections in the history of the United States. So the only thing that could follow that up would be the electoral, the people who choose the president. People follow the presidential rate every day for the last year of it. So if you give them somewhere they care, it matters. Now.
So would you say the midterms are an example?
Midterms are an example, yes. Because if we also create this habit of them caring about their individuals, then we solve the midterm issue because we get Americans more involved because now they realize their vote matters. In England, they have the day off because England wants to show that their vote matters that day. In America, if we create this system of idea that the politicians, the electorates, go to the people and talk to you, tell you their ideas, tell you what they want, tell you how their head decides on things, you will uniquely care.
So if not everyone votes for the president, why would everyone vote for their electorate?
Say that again?
So if not everyone votes for the president or in these midterm elections, why would you say that more people
in order
would
to
vote
prevent Trump, especially after this precedent that Trump set in place, I promise you by the next 2020 election, if Trump even runs for re-election, that will also be another highly cared about election. So people will care, and if we have that system in place by fiat, if that happens in place, then people will uniquely care about who is choosing if Donald Trump gets a second term.
So would you say...
Exactly, and that just increases more transparency.
Okay. Well, would you say our votes counted equally now?
No.
And will they votes be equal in your plan?
Yes.
How?
How? They're okay. How?
No, they will not be equal. However, if you want to solve disenfranchisement, if that's your goal is to stop people from being disenfranchised, popular vote's not going to do that either.
Yeah, but under your plan, you agree that there will still be massive power of voting inequality. One person will not get one vote.
There will be more.
In your plan.
No. There will be more participation, more democracy in our plan than your plan offers.
How?
I'll explain in the.
Oh, it's the rebuttal anyway. I'll explain it to you before you go. It's in the rebuttal.
Right.
How uniquely it does it is because we create a voter participation. If we give them people or personalities to look up to or to understand or care how they make decisions, then that matters. Okay, instead of the current system or the path you make, which is the majority chooses, correct? In that system, the minorities are put more behind. Counterplan doesn't cause that and solves better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have 2 minutes of prep time, correct? And then they'll have 2 minutes, and then we'll finish. Okay. So this is what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
And we have to decide.
One of those. Is a theoretical frame. Right.
Let's see what happens.
A theoretical frame is something that was designed to keep slavery in place. That's the rise. But that means.
Listen, keep going.
We have the best.
You can't think logically. Morally. That's why he was like, no. Authoritative. I want authoritative. Because you're tense. You're relaxed. They're relaxed because authority matters.
They could not do that. That doesn't make us cheaters, but talking.
We're gonna.
Juice.
So here's.
Yeah, go for it.
Right?
Good now.
You need to frame.
Look, let me show you. Once again, finish it.
No, this is not the time to reiterate. This is the time to explain everything. To explain why. Everything's gonna counterplay.
Can you give the time? Yeah. Before I think, give me a.
Okay, yes. No, remember.
I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, I got it.
All right.
Alright, I don't need the rest of my time.
Okay.
Go now.
I need to time it.
Oh, would you guys mind putting the timer on and giving
Yeah,
me
I've
a
been
1
doing
minute
that the
warning?
rest of the debate.
Okay, but like a 1 minute warning, so I don't want. I know I
Okay.
ran.
It's 6 minutes, correct?
Yeah, I got it.
Is it 6 or is it 4?
It's 6, 4, 6, 4, 6, 4. 2 minute prep.
Oh, the
6.
4 is the cross,
Yeah.
but this is going to be
If
another
you want
6.
to do 4, we'll match 4. Or
Okay.
6. All right.
That's fine.
I'll give you a 3 and then I'll give you a 5.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Ready?
Yeah. Okay, so they've made a lot of claims in that last argument, and I feel the need, on our honor, to address a few of them. They have called us cheaters, and it sounded like the only reason they did that was because they couldn't defend our arguments for the impact of the Electoral College. And at the same time he was doing that, I would like to remind everyone that he started speeding up to an aggressively high level. And I believe that in a true public format, the one in which we're discussing, where everyone may say what they choose, making it inaccessible to the common public is not something that should be taken into consideration. But more than that, the actual structure of their arguments is the real thing that we're here to defend right now, and the real thing that we're here to talk about. And everything they have said has been around one single issue: the theoretical framework of the Constitution. And you know what the problem with the theoretical framework of the Constitution is? No matter how much I love that document, or what it represents for the founding and freedom of America, it had problems. It was designed in a time where slavery was considered okay. That is not okay. But if that is allowed to continue to permeate through our system, we will never move forward as a country. We've seen that. We've demonstrated that. The rollback of civil rights that has always come about from a top trickling down to state levels. We see it in Reagan. We see a backlash with Trump. And yes, they mentioned that there has been only 3 times where the popular vote has outweighed the Electoral College vote. But the thing is about this, with disenfranchised voters, people aren't turning out because their votes don't matter. In the current system, one vote is not worthy of a single person. But in their system, they're continuing that. They believe that by creating celebrities in our electoral college, we will have a more fair system. I don't think so. I think the only way to fix this system is to give the people the power they deserve. I don't want a proxy vote for the American democracy. I want an actual vote. And I think that's an absolutely critical distinction between our plan and their plan. Is they're trying to confuse us into thinking that a slight readjustment of the electoral college is going to fix all of the problems in the system. And how they fix them is somehow through more media attention to a system that's already corrupt. What we believe is that if people have the power to truly change things, that they will do so. We will see more of these upsets where the electoral college is going to be outweighed by the popular vote. But the popular vote will actually work. Their plan is to try to stop Trump, but the simplest way to do that is to give people the power, and he wouldn't be there in the first place. And neither would have Bush have been. Maybe the Iraq war wouldn't have gotten started. But they have said that the onus, the burden of proof is on us. But we have defended that, and so well have we defended that they had to try to call us cheaters. But we have shown you that there is a disenfranchisement of votes going on. We have shown you that there are a rollback of civil rights, and we have demonstrated that in a currently heavily militarized America, something where actual assault rifles are just being handed out to the poorest communities and to the cities where these riots are taking place, these riots, these protests that are protected under the Constitution, they will turn violent if we don't give the outlet, and talk about theoretical framework. That was the purpose, was an outlet. It was an outlet for political disenfranchisement and suppression to be able to come out and your ability to vote. But that is being crushed right now under the weight of an electoral college system. Their theoretical framework doesn't make sense because the theoretical framework, no matter how idealistic, no matter how bold, no matter what they did, it was a compromise on a currently broken America, an America that we're trying to fix. And maybe we weren't ready then. Maybe we couldn't get into a civil war right after the revolution happened. But I believe that we're ready now. I believe that we're ready now to go back and fix that which is already broken and move forward as a country. I've said this before, and I will say it again, that there is no democracy while there is racism. This is a moral, this is an ethical imperative placed on us to change the system. And if they believe that the Constitution is so holy that it cannot be changed, then maybe they have not heard of the Bill of Rights or all of the amendments that have followed. The amendments have changed America, the amendments that have made it better, the amendments that we have needed to move together as a country through all of the strife and all of the difficulty. We have changed that document because it was designed to be changed. And so what I ask the judge and what I ask you is this. Let us change it just one more time. Abolish the Electoral College. Thank you.
Nah.
All right.
Tea time prep.
2 minutes. So, excuse me. I really want to talk. I'm not getting that 6 months ago. Once again, and you take your answer. Sorry.
No. Wait.
I have that watch. Right here. I'm gonna just put this as. Alright, and then talk about this.
the AF has failed to present the necessity for the Electoral College to be abolished. We see no reason why our plan does not include the enfranchisement of African American and minority voters. We present an opportunity for individuals in Carolina to elect 15 different people from different ways of life, from different places. In Pennsylvania, we've got 20 people. California, they've got 55. In Wyoming, they got 3. That's more than enough for 600,000 people, right? We're creating the opportunity for more participation because it's more likely that you get a candidate in office that really suits you and that you feel is privy to your needs. That's one of 20 rather than one of one, which is the national election. Secondly, they claim to know what minorities are thinking with no empirical evidence. There's no way you've read the mind of the minority population and are able to establish the fact that they know that their vote doesn't count. Secondly, the 3/5 compromise was racist, right? Great. Where in the constitutional framework that we defined in terms of Hamilton's original intent in Federalist Paper 68 does it imply in any way, shape, or form that minorities should be disenfranchised? Thirdly, we know that people don't know the electors. We pointed that out, and that's why we need more visibility. By having an elector elected in a decision that requires a yes or no answer creates the type of transparency, once again, that we don't achieve anywhere else in American politics. We thought he was going to vote Democratic this year. Vote Republican. Who's voting for him next year? Sure as heck not me. This holds these electors accountable. This creates a system in which your decision, you have a specific scope on what the electoral's action is that's creating this unprecedented amount of visibility and transparency. Most importantly, their plan of the popular vote does not solve marginalization of minorities. I'm going to continue to bring up Wyoming just because it happens to be the smallest state. No offense to anybody who is from Wyoming here, but the population of Wyoming is around 600,000 people liberally. New York City alone, just the city, has 8.4 million people, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Would it make more sense for me to go to Wyoming and campaign to get everybody from Wyoming? Or would it make more sense for me to go to New York and even just get 10% of voters? In that case, logically, it makes no sense how a popular vote will solve for people that are being marginalized or can't vote. They say, this is for marginalization, and it marginalizes people further, and it was designed at a time where slavery was okay, and this is going to cause a race war because everybody, look, regardless of if it was made at the time of slavery, that's not what Hamilton is talking about at all in Federalist Paper 68. We've also seen the possibility of demagogues, and we've seen that they're able to appeal to the American people. Regardless if he lost the popular vote, he got pretty much half. I mean, he lost by a few million, but he also got plenty million of votes. I'm not sure of the right numbers. Lastly, you guys like to talk about the rollback of civil rights and how we're seeing such dramatic shifts in the political infrastructure, and we argued again and again and again that would not happen in our system. We provide an outlet, which you also claim to provide, for political disenfranchisement by allowing the people to be represented that weren't previously represented. They say to conquer people, you must divide and conquer and leave every man one vote for himself. Although he is entitled to have his opinion, we believe that one man is more powerful with representation from the electorates in their state. Also, they have not proposed an amendment that would work. The AF has the responsibility of proposing a way in which it is necessary to abolish the electoral college from a constitutional standpoint, because that's how it is defined. And we believe as the negative that they have failed to do so, and therefore you must vote negative in this debate. Thank you.
All right, good round.
That was awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, you too, man. Yeah.
Here we go with the name calling, you and me.
That was deep, bro.
We got rid.
It wasn't.
It was obviously.
All right. Yeah.